Unit 5, Learning Target Number 6. Find percent of a quantity as a rate per 100. Let's begin our discussion on percents with a great big square. That makes lots of sense, right? We're going to talk about percents. We might as well talk about a gigantic square right there in the center of our screen. So, how many of the blocks in this little square are shaded? We have lots of little blocks inside of the big block. So how many are there that are shaded? Well, if we count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 blocks on this side right here, and then 2 more right next to it. So that gives us a total of 12 blocks that are shaded. We have 12 blocks shaded. So how many total blocks are there? When we count, we know we have 10 on this side. I'm going to go ahead and mark that over here. We have 10 over here. 10 over here. And then we have 10 on the top right there. 10 right there. And when we multiply those together, 10 times 10, we get 100. And that is the total number of squares. So 10 across the top times 10 across the side gives us 100. Now, how could we write that as a ratio? How could we write that as a ratio? Well, we could say that we have 12 blocks that are shaded, 12 shaded blocks, to a total of 100 blocks. So we would say 12 to 100. Now, in its simplest form, that's what a percent is. This is 12%. 12% of the blocks in this particular square have been shaded. That's 12%. Now, you want to know what a percent is specifically. Well, percent comes from the word, it means per 100. And it comes from the Latin word, actually, centum. That means it's Latin for 100. So per 100 per centum, and that's where you get per cent. So it is a number of blocks, or it is a number of things, in this case, blocks, per 100. We have 12 blocks per 100, which leaves us with 12%. Knowing that, let's see what we can come up with for this problem right here. Fill in the grid for 41%. So we know that we're going to have 41 out of every 100 blocks filled. Our ratio is 41 to 100. And we know that each one of these sides here is 10. So we can fill these up pretty easily. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We'll put a line through there. There's 10 more, that's 20. 10 more, that's 30. 10 more, that's 40. And then one little box at the top, and that gives us 41%. 41 per 100. Now let's take what we learned about percents and see if we can apply them to solve some problems. We'll take a look at some problems here and see if we can solve them. Our first problem says, express 32% as a ratio. 32% as a ratio. Now, 32% means that out of every 100 blocks, I'm going to fill 32 of them up. So 32% as a ratio would be 32 out of how many? Out of 100, or 32 to 100. 32 shaded blocks to 100 unshaded blocks. Just as a little tip, I always remember to put the 100 on the bottom, because this looks like 2 zeros and a 1 in the middle. It just kind of reminds me of 1, 0, 0 when I look at it. Only the 1 would be really big like that. So if that helps you to remember to put it over 100, that's great. Let's take a look at our second problem. Wayne is playing basketball. He makes 27 out of every 100 shots. Express this as a percent. Now, what is our ratio here? We have 27 shots that he makes out of 100 total. Now, what kind of a ratio is that? Is that part to part or part to whole? It's part to whole. We have 27 of our part to our 100 total. That gives us a ratio of 27 over 100, which, if we look back up here, looks an awful lot like this. And this was 32%. This must be 27%. Finally, let's take a look at a taxes question. When we get older, we have to pay taxes on things. You probably have to pay taxes too if you have any money and you've ever bought anything at the store. So let's take a look at taxes. Let's say that you pay 19% taxes on your weekly salary, on the amount that you earn each week. Now, let's say, just for fun, that this week you earned $100 this week. How much do you pay in taxes? Now, anytime we see a percent, we're always going to think of a ratio of something over 100. In this case, it's 19 over 100. Now, if you earned $100, and for every $100 you earned, you were supposed to, and that's what our ratio says, right? For every $100 you earn, then you pay $19. Well, if I earned $100 and I pay 19 out of every every 100, then I'm going to have a ratio of 19 to 100. So how much did I pay in taxes? I paid $19 in taxes because I earned $100. One of the most important things you're going to learn in these lessons is converting percents and decimals and fractions between each other. So converting is really important when we're doing math. Now, I've given you this little diagram. If I were you, I would take just a second, I would pause this video, and I would write this down, because this is going to help you to solve and to convert percents, decimals, and fractions. So, to explain this drawing here, percents, if I want to convert a percent to a decimal, I'm going to follow this step right here. I'm going to move the decimal 2 spaces to the left. So here's my percent. Here I have here 12%. And I want to convert that, let's say, to a decimal. I want to convert that to a decimal. I'm going to take this, and right now my decimal point at 12%, my decimal point is right there. I'm going to move that 2 spaces to the left. 1, 2. And I'm going to put it right there. And that is going to give me 0.12. And that is how you convert, I'm going to erase this, that's how you convert a percent to a decimal. Percent to decimal, just move that decimal space, that decimal point 2 spaces to the left. Now, let's say I want to convert a decimal to a fraction. This is something we've actually done before. The first thing we're going to do is we'll remember that 12, 0.12, 12 100ths, that we can write that exactly like we say it as a fraction, 12 100ths. Now I can write that just like that, 12 over 100. But I can also simplify that fraction. So how can I simplify that? I can divide both the top and the bottom by 2. And when I divide 12 by 2, I get 6. When I divide 100 by 2, I get 50. Am I done? No, because both of these can be divided by 2. When I divide those by 2, I get 3 over 25. And now I have simplified, and I am good. 3 over 25 is my fraction. Now let's say we wanted to work from the opposite direction. We wanted to go from fractions to decimals. Let's say we'll go down here to this problem right here. We'll take a fraction and move it to a decimal. All we have to do here is divide the top by the bottom. Remember, the top dog gets the house, so we're going to take 7/10, and we're going to give the top dog the house, and the other little dog is to sit lonely outside. 10 goes into 7 0 times. We can't take 10 into 7, so we have to add a 0 and a decimal point. Now, 10 goes into 70 7 times. 7 times 10 is 70. Subtract those 2, and we get 0. So, as a decimal, 7/10 looks like this, 0.7. Okay, now let's say we want to go from a decimal to a percent. Well, now all we have to do is move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. When we have 0.7 right now, 0.7, we're going to move that decimal 2 places to the right. 1, 2. Our decimal point will go right there, and we'll have to add a 0, and that will give us 70%. 70%. And we can do that for any of the above. We can move it from decimals to percents, percents to fractions, etc. So we'll take this decimal 0.35, and we'll write that as a fraction. We'll take the decimal, we'll write it as a fraction. We'll simply write it over 100, 35 over 100. And that can be simplified by dividing by 5. We divide the top by 5, and we get 7 by the bottom by 5. And what do we get? We get 20. 7 over 20 is our fraction. And then we need to convert that decimal to a percent. A decimal to a percent, we simply move the decimal 2 spaces to the right. So we'll move that decimal space 2 spaces to the right, and that will give us 35%. And that's all there is to it. Be sure you get this diagram down before you're done.